Broadcasting from the UK and across the world online. You're now watching The Moore Show and I'm your host Kevin Moore. Now for the next hour I'll be covering subjects that will open up your mind and provide you with information you may have never heard before. Now on today's show I'm about to be joined by my guest Grace Cavanaugh. Now Grace is a second generation channel, clairvoyant, clairaudient medium and intuitive psychic. Now she had an extreme awakening in 2005, immediately after her father was suddenly killed in a head-on collision. Now the shock moved her perception to a new level and all the psychic gifts she had as a child began to reawaken. Now Grace went through and experienced a very deep state in expansion of her consciousness in order to open, learn and balance these new ways of beginning, all which led to the creation of Eternal Light Foundation and her life's work. Now she channels Osairah and will discuss her journey, teachings and much more. Grace Cavanaugh, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Thank you for having me here so much.
Oh, it's so beautiful to have you on, Grace. It really is. Someone that I've had a reading with just recently, and we'll get into all that as well. And someone that I generally feel a lot of the channels coming on a connection with, but with yourself, I understand where you're coming from a little bit. I think I do. When we go for that doubting Thomas stage where we're like, what the hell is this? Yeah.
Yeah.
I can really connect with you on that, because sometimes when we're channeling, and I think you've said this before, it can be the most terrifying way to bring consciousness through for some people, can't it?
Yeah, definitely. It's lots of I would say there's lots of stages to go through with that. Actually, it didn't just happen for me overnight, and so there was a definite and complete process, and it happened over quite a bit of time, actually.
Absolutely. So, with yourself, then, obviously, you've got quite I found it quite heartstringy in some respects that you had to lose your dad, for this gift to come through. In a sense, it was almost like it was a junction point in your soul's contract, that when dad passed over, that was kind of a window or a permission slip for then you to enter into your own gifts. Would you say there was any truth in that?
Oh, definitely, and even more so later on, because now it's about let's see. It's 12 years since my father passed. And in the last 3 to 4 years, my whole family has passed. So my very closest people also. But it was my dad who I hadn't had a death experience of my family members, close family member. And he died very suddenly. He was killed head on in a car crash. And that shock kind of rerouted my whole system. And it was almost like, I often say that it was like a paradigm shift that I had absolutely zero control over. I just kind of pretty much went into shock and kind of dealt with what was happening. And from that time forward, though, my reality completely shifted.
Yeah.
I always say that I was on a spiritual path from a very young age, but that's partly because at a very, very young age, I literally remember acknowledging that I'd already been here. I was only 5 years old and I knew that I had been reincarnated again, that I was here. I didn't necessarily use the word at 5 years old, I'm reincarnated, but I remember looking out at the skyline in the place where I was, and I completely have a very definitive memory of knowing, oh, I chose to be here again. Okay, we're doing this again.
Wow.
And on so many levels, I had quite a journey of struggle and pain and trauma and experiences that, accelerated that stuff and then also repressed it. And then, so I was kind of always a seeker on some level. At the same time, though, I did have kind of a clairvoyance, or not a clairvoyance. Yeah, I don't know if it was a clairvoyance at that time, but I used to see literally the vibrations of light in everything. I didn't not see vibrations of light in everything. Literally in like a chain link fence that I used to walk beside on my way home, I would see the vibrating little electrons in that, or photons in that chain link fence. So it wasn't just people's auras that I was seeing. It was in the trees, in the fence, in the furniture, in the clouds, in the earth. And I just, in everyone and everything, I saw light. So wow. I thought that was real. I know it is real, but I thought that was what was real for everyone. I thought everybody saw the vibrating golden energetic light that was just always moving in everything. I thought everybody saw that.
Yes. Yeah, well, I suppose, that's almost like you're seeing consciousness in everything.
Yeah, and that's a really good way to say it, because, of course, now, 40-something years later, I recognize that it is literally consciousness, vibration, sound and light. Sound and light is consciousness and vibration. That's what we are. That's what it is. That's what creation is. But of course, I didn't know that then. So the short version for this little piece is that I was always on a spiritual path.
Yes.
I was always aware of something more all the time. Even when I tried in my teens to repress that as the rebellious teenager, tried to repress that, something always was nagging me off to the side, always kind of remember. And I tried to keep remembering. And there were times when I got direct hits and total alignments to remembering, and pockets of past lives would open up and I'd be like, oh my God. And then, I would shut that down and keep trying to move on in my life.
Absolutely. And I just want to go, the reason I brought 2005 in here, because that was a pinnacle place to start, I think, on your journey. And it's always obviously not the nicest time to remember, but I'm guessing, it's easier for you now in a sense, because you know where Dad is. You've been able to make sense of it a bit more with what you've been through.
Yeah, I have. And I do appreciate that, actually. And I do appreciate I shouldn't say I do say appreciate. I do have a great appreciation for death, for the death of this body, that there is actually no death. And I've learned that so strongly from Osairah. And then I had to go through it, very suddenly. Then 2 years ago, I lost my mother. So, and this was she was the last one. So, and to me, she was too young. She was 65. It was just too young. And so my recognition of death is very, very mixed. I completely feel ease, because I know there's no death. Literally, we don't die. But I also have had to be the real experience of being human and feel the loss, really feel the loss, and then go through the cycle of what that is. Sometimes you're okay for a while after death and you're like, I'm fine. And then 4 years later, a trigger will trigger all of that again, and it's all up in a totally new way. Right. So, yeah, that first death with my dad was the thing that I say accessed the crack in the door, opened it all up, and I was completely life changed. I went from one paradigm of thinking of reality to a totally different, and all of my psychic awareness opened up. I became completely clairaudient, clairvoyant. I totally was clairsentient. I was just, all the clairs were right there.
Yeah.
And
go ahead. Sorry.
It wasn't easy.
No, absolutely. And what did that do for Mum as the years went by with your awakening? Did it help Mum on her journey a little bit, just to know that, okay, there's a possibility here?
Well, so my mom was always on her own spiritual journey. Here's the interesting piece. My mom she was only 18 years older than me, and she was always seeking herself on some level spiritually. My mom was the kind of person in 1980s who had a channeler to our house. So I was 15 years old when I had my first experience with a channeler. And, that wasn't like I sat in my own living room at 15 and thought, oh yeah, that's what I want to do. Oh my God, no, not a billion years did I ever think that was the case. But I mean, it was my first exposure to the experience of someone doing a channeling. And so my mom was very interested in this and was actually for many years trying to learn to channel herself. I left home at 18. I never went back home. So my experience with my mom and when my dad passed, I was in my 30s. And I had one child myself already. I was, I'm married, and my mom and my dad had already been divorced for many years. Her own life experience was very different than mine on some levels in the spiritual awakening arena. And I would say on some levels at that time, I got pushed through that door extremely. And everything I went through, I kind of routed back to her and said, this is what's happening. Oh my God. And kind of was a mirror, and it triggered her and her healing and her walk even more in the next 10 years until she died.
Wow.
So,
okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
What an answer that is. Yeah. Okay. Well, I you were meant to be there at 15 when a channeler was there, weren't you? Because, I think it must have helped you with where you are now. Surely it must. That's something that those little experiences all contribute, don't they? Somewhere. Yeah.
But that doesn't mean and I was. It was. Let's just say that when this landed and this really started to open up and all of these things started to kind of happen, I began seeing visions full on. I would open my eyes at sleep time. I would sit up, and the vision would still be literally like energy hanging in the room, like a vision of a film, being projected into the room. I would see visions with my eyes straight open. I definitely learned to do that too, though, in meditation. So, but more, I will say that mostly my experience was that I started to have phenomena happen, and the phenomena was pretty extreme. I mean, I had visitations. In my room, in my house, I had sound, the most beautiful. I can't even give words to the celestial sound that came into my home and was playing in my house in the middle of the night. That was not in this world.
And
I felt.
Was this when you had the kids, or was this when you was a teenager, or?
No, I'm sorry. This was when I had the kids.
Yeah.
So, I'm sorry, I'm bouncing all around here, but
okay.
My experience was the kind of like I felt like it just landed in my world, and I just was opened up wide, and all kinds of things started to happen. But that was, a couple years before I was really willing. And I feel like all of that was leading me to this point where I was seeing people who'd passed. I was hearing things. I knew I wasn't having a psychotic break. I knew I wasn't having, hallucinations.
Yes.
I wasn't going crazy,
No.
But I didn't know how to navigate this. And I didn't know really, I knew it was a spiritual thing, but I just didn't know why, and I didn't know what. And so I got pretty anxious, and I started to meditate. And it was in the anxiety pushed me to meditate. And it was the meditation that opened up my field to slow down enough to have access to the consciousnesses that were trying to have conversation with me.
Yeah.
And over time, I felt these nudgings, literally like someone was nudging me and tapping on my shoulder and trying to communicate with me. Then it became clear that there was a conversation that wanted to be had through me. And I can just say this. I didn't necessarily go, oh yeah, let's do that. I was like kicking and screaming. I was like, no freaking way. Are you kidding? No, what are you talking about? What will I look like? Who will I be? That changes everything. It just was like, what about my kids? What about my family? Everything.
Right.
So then from that point on was a full process, very specific process.
Oh yes, and we're so going to get into that process just for other people as well. That's so important. That part of your journey is really important, right? And that will help so many other people. And just going back to when whenever we lose anyone, no matter what we think we know, like of this nature of reality, or even when we channel and everything, it doesn't take away the human side. Yeah. I don't care what anyone says. And, you know, I think if it does take away the human side and you're like, oh, I know where they've gone and everything else, I don't know about those people sometimes. I don't know. That's almost like you've disconnected yourself from this reality. You have to go through that grieving stage. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, do
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I didn't go into denial. I felt
Good.
it all. And then, you know, even when I felt like, okay, now I can get on with things. And I did. And we do. You know, there's a point where we go, okay, I've grieved for months or whatever. And there's a part where you kind of stand up and go, okay, I have to get on with my life. I got to take care of these kids. I got to make money. I got to do life.
Of course.
But that still didn't stop the process. I still had to feel it. I still had to be in it.
And let's just go to what was happening at the time in 2005 financially and everything else, because until you started to embrace your teachings, I'm guessing that, and that probably was with resistance as well, and I don't mean anything personal by that, I've been through the same thing as well, right? I'm guessing that when that process started to awaken into all your seeds, that then you started to look at the law of attraction a bit more and some other things. I mean, where was your life prior to the awakening to where you are now? Because it seems like you've got quite, well, it seems to me that you're very balanced, it seems. You know, I mean, you may not agree with that, but I'm just saying it from a distance. I hope you do agree, right? And that you're in a different space, a very different space.
Yeah. I'm in a very different space on so many levels. I mean, I look at my life, as probably many of us do, as segments of like realities, because they don't, in some senses, it's almost like, is this really my life? Was that really my life? You know, in the 90s, I was in my 20s, and I was in my early 20s. I don't know, you know, time. And I had moved to LA, and I grew up on the Oregon coast, and also in Southern California on California coast. So I was very much a West Coast girl, and when I moved to LA, I was about 23 or something. The reason I actually moved here is because I got onto a TV show when I lived in San Diego. And when I got onto that TV show, I had been taking theater because I loved theater. And I got onto a TV show, and the woman who was the casting director basically said, you should go to LA. I have a manager for you. So my boyfriend and I moved to LA, and we got here, and within 3 months, I had a manager and a commercial agent, and I booked a national television commercial. Here's the thing. I know that I had these pie in the sky ideas for a while about all of that. My experience is that I was so green and so naive in this arena, because it sort of was just sort of dropped into my world. I didn't even really, when I first was told you should get a commercial agent, I actually didn't know what that meant, commercial agent, because I didn't realize they needed actors in commercials. They considered actors for commercials. It's so dumb. I was so like naive. And the long and the short of that is I worked in restaurants, and I worked in offices, and I worked in commercials. When I did good and booked great national jobs, which I did, I made plenty of money. And naively at 20 something for many, many years, I thought that was the way it was all going to be. I just thought that's life. It's going to, the $5,000 checks are going to roll in, and I'm just going to be doing this forever. It was not the case. I was still on a spiritual journey, but, I was healing my life too. I had a lot of childhood stuff. And so I was in a lot of women's groups, a lot of healing groups. I, was dealing with a lot of emotional, psychological, spiritual stuff. I think that we kind of all do if you're on a healing journey.
Yeah, of course.
And I was really introspective. And I was really of service at those times, too. I was of service to other women, especially, and groups and people. And I learned how to grow up in those 20s, in the 90s in Los Angeles, in a lot of these, programs and healing groups and spiritual circles and stuff like that. And so that was my journey. It was, clearing out the crap of my life was the 20s and growing up.
Well, thank you for just being so honest there as well. But I mean, you could have woken up in your 20s. This gift could have been there then. I reckon there was a window for it, but you know, we all have free will, and you chose not to. And there's no finish line with this work, is there?
No, there's where I think there's all these potential realities of possibilities. We do have free will and the choice to, you know, expand. And I was playing out some of my own dramas, and I must have loved it, and I did. And I, you know, woke up to the degrees that I could wake up, and I really wanted to have children, and I wanted to be married. So, you know, that was my next stage, and all of that brought in a whole nother experience of life. And wow, children and that kind of personal responsibility, that emotional, psychic responsibility to children was so overwhelming to me. Then it made all of my reality about the work that I had done, which is, you know, I did all this healing work so I could be here to be having this wonderful life, but why wasn't I having this wonderful life? And not to say it wasn't wonderful, it was, but there was certain things that were still needed its healing. And all I can say is I was, you know, my ex-husband and I are in excellent terms. He's one of my best friends. We co-parent so well together. Good. We are just on such excellent terms. But we were both in an unhappy marriage. And when my father died literally on our 6th wedding anniversary.
Wow.
And 3 months later, my husband moved out. So at the time, I went through like a massive breakdown of everything.
Right.
And it woke my ass up.
Oh, yes.
And I say that because it woke me up in that way where everything I thought I was and who I was going to be just shattered down. And I was raw and vulnerable and wide open. And then all this stuff started happening. And I was navigating huge waves. They weren't just small little things or like every once in a while. It was constant, and it was all the time for a couple of years.
Listen, and look at, you know, and the kids on your own a lot of the time as well. Well, that's a lot, man. That's a lot that you took on in this lifetime, right? But you've done.
That's just this much.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but you've done so well, and look where you've come on. And I say that because with what that space brought through when you lost everything, that was the same process for me when I lost everything. That's when it came through. Now, when it came through for me, just, you know, just so other people may relate to this as well, it was like, it was just a voice. I thought I was having a Neil Donald Walsh moment. You know, the voice in the head. You know, am I losing it? You know, do I want it to pretend it's there? Am I pretending now? This is how adults make, you know, pretend things. But no, there was so much depth and wealth of that voice that came out, and that it was beyond just me, as it was for yourself. Now, okay, so you mentioned earlier on meditation is when it came through as well, so that you were slowing yourself down with everything you was going through. What came through, and what was that process like when it was coming through?
Well, like what you just said, it was this very clear, distinct awareness to a voice that was clouded in my own sound of myself on some hand, but I knew it was not myself voice, me and my constant thinking voice. And it was a voice that was distinctly, I don't want to say separate, but different. And it was said that they wanted to speak through me. And kind of my running joke on this idea is I can really remember the living room that I was sitting in and where I was. And I literally said out loud in the moment where they said, "We want to speak through you." And I literally said, "Yeah, right. Like, what am I supposed to do? Open my mouth and you'll just start talking?" I mean, it just made no logical sense to me. You know, I understood the channeling idea and that people did this. And it was around that time the law of attraction stuff was a little more, was becoming more aware in my life. And it was not too long after that kind of first introduction of the push that they were there and present and I could feel them, that I first heard Abraham. I don't remember when I first heard Abraham actually, but, you know, Esther Hicks was you know, I think the very first time I ever saw her was on The Secret. And so that was in my field of awareness at that time too. But, the idea of being able to allow something to speak and how that process, I had no idea. No idea. Here's what happened. I sat in meditation. They kept nudging me more and more. I just felt the presence. I was very aware of them. I saw them clairvoyantly in the space. They were golden beings. They were just like the light that I had always seen, only they just didn't have a body, and like we do. And I felt them, and they were so loving and good, and it felt so warm and safe. So at one point, they had said there would be two people. I spoke. They had said there'd be two people who would show up in my life and basically volunteer to sit with me to allow the process to happen, which was like, what? And, it just was all so surreal. I look back at it now and I feel like I was just following these breadcrumbs of like, I have no understanding of why I'm doing any of this, but it was my innate spiritual, like internal, I have to do this. I don't know why, but I have to do this. And I don't know why. It wasn't, I say this too, it wasn't so that I could have a website,
Yeah. Right.
That was the farthest. I mean, like, that was not even in my reality at all. This was it was a natural uprising. It was bubbling up from within, and it was being pushed into me. And so these two people showed up, and they were a man and a woman, and they did commit to sit with me, and I'm forever grateful for both of them. And we pretty much committed weekly to sitting for a very long time. It was almost close to a year. And I literally went there every week going, kicking and screaming, like, oh my God, why am I freaking doing this? I don't know why? And then I would go and I'd be like, okay, yes, we're going to get somewhere. Why am I doing this again? But then, and the process was like so ugly. I'm not joking. It was ugly. I cried like a baby. I fell apart. I thought I was crazy. I couldn't stand it, how my voice sounded. I couldn't stand it, how fast they spoke, how I would stand off to the side and then I'd jump back in and then I'd fall apart. And I don't mean jump back in like it's a poltergeist, but it just, I learned through that year of time with my friends how to hold this energy, how to set myself off and allow it to move through. And then I would see when I would step in and mess around and like be all egoic. I could see the difference. I could feel the difference. They could hear the difference. They kind of pushed, guided, and they also asked really great questions that actually helped me be able to do this.
Because
with the guides.
Because with those deep questions that you're able to bring in something deeper than yourself, and you're answering questions.
Totally.
Yeah, that was so. See, those two people were so neat. It was so perfect. They were sent to you. Well, they were sent to you, weren't they? Let's face it, right?
Yes.
Yeah, because sometimes. Yeah, no, that was that. It was. That's just like the lady that Pauline that I did my channeling with when I first started channeling straight into it. The first or second day of channeling, we was writing a book, and I was just like you, kicking and screaming all the goddamn way, right? So and there's others that will listen to this conversation that this will resonate with, right? This will help them, right? It's a normal part of it. It's okay. I mean, I think when you channel, you're great, but you're hard on yourself. Let me just say that, right? And I'm not, in a nice way, I'm saying that, right? But I'm saying that because I saw you when you came out of the channeling that you gave to me, and I thought how wondrous that channeling was, and I could see parts of you where you were like, oh, as in like, did it resonate with him? I know what you were thinking, what did I just bring out there? Was that any use? And it was absolutely amazing what you brought out. I'm just saying that, right, as it is, as the truth, right? But I think that part of you that's fighting it sometimes, that keeps you grounded. You're a very grounded channeler.
Well, I would say that I will tell you that I actually believe that now, and I also will attribute a huge amount of that to the long process that this has been. Like literally it's been about 10 years that I've been channeling. I started out channeling, honestly, in public first before I would do one-on-one readings. So I went directly towards groups of people to just sit and allow the information to disseminate towards the group of people, and then they got to ask questions, and that was sort of my training wheels. And then I don't know why it was that way. It almost seems logical to say you do it in private, do one-on-one sessions first, but I went towards groups first. It just felt like that was what they wanted me to do, so I put it out there, and all these people came, and so I did groups in Los Angeles, and then I went to the one-on-one sessions. And you know, the process for me to accept this, I give a huge amount of credit to being a mother, because my children grounded me. Being a mother grounded me. I was a very magical kind of thinker in some ways, because of how I was wired as a child. To escape my reality, I kind of went to other realities. You know, I was, and so in my 20s, I had a hard time being grounded. And it was my children, if I'm really honest, that helped me become grounded. They also activated a huge amount of my own psychic awareness, too, because I was so psychically connected to my children, my babies, that that part of me grew, too.
Well, let me ask you something, since you speak about your kids as well. I bet you they're... well, no, you tell me. How do they take your work?
So now they're teenagers at this moment. Right now they're 14 and 17.
Right.
And so I've been doing it for 10 years. And so they were about 4 and 7. And when I first started doing groups, they would come, they came to groups. And their dad came to the groups. And we, you know, had the experience of a big group and me being that person. And it was a non-thing. It was just a non-thing because they were little. So they've grown up in it. At this point, you know, only, you know, there was a period, I would say those really rough years of teenage land are about 13 to 15. So my older daughter, who's now 17, you know, really, I don't know if she's going to like this, but didn't tell anybody what I did for a long time until like a year ago or 2 years ago. 2 years ago, in her high school group of kids, you know, she then at one point said, I'm like a medium. Yeah. Because the Long Island medium and the way that things are kind of, you know, and people are, and so kids are like a little more accepting. So, I mean, here's the thing. I know from how we've lived that they'll circle back around and it's fine, you know, but, you know, kids want to fit in. Kids want to be like everybody else. So
yeah, but that's the good. You know, but this is the good scenario, because the reason I'm bringing them in here, you've just said the perfect words, that they want to fit in, and that's how I've felt sometimes. Where, you know, there's some parts of me that are like, you know what, I just want to start another YouTube channel and do something normal.
Yes.
Right, and yes. You know, I see all these big vloggers. I'm like, I'll just become a big vlogger, and I'll put this other channel to the side, and I just do it part time. Do you know what I mean? It's not the, but every goddamn time that happens, I'm just drawn back into doing this work, and it puts me back on the path again. And that was exactly what you said in your reading to me as well, that you will always be brought back on this path, right? And I was like, oh, Osiris has got me right, which we'll get into Osiris in a minute. It's got me so right. And that's what it's like though, isn't it? Because we live in this reality where, you know, it's cool to, you know, especially growing up as a teenager, do you know what I mean? To be seen doing the regular things, and when it comes into this work, we suffer from it as well in some whether that's the ego though, I don't know, is it?
I think there's all kinds of things wrapped up in that. I think we're undoing old timelines. I think we're unraveling societal, cultural norms, and if we call them norms, I'm putting quotations marks around them, things that we're breaking paradigms. We're both busting through things, and that old paradigm belief about how I should be or fitting in is we got to crack that. We're all trying to crack it. On some level, and become a new experience. I go through it, I will tell you my experiences. I go through that, like confidence loss, like feelings of like, oh my God, what am I doing? I used to make a joke to my groups, because I've had a monthly group channeling for almost 5 years. I think it's 5 years, maybe it's longer. every month in Los Angeles. And I used to joke with them about 3 years ago. I used to say, I don't know how much, and I was joking, but I was kind of serious because I was going through it again. I'm like, I don't know how much longer we're going to have these monthly group channelings, because I just want to become a dental hygienist because because I just was so like, oh my God, can I just be like not like this? And that's part of the process too. I mean, that's just part of my process. Maybe there are people out there who've completely accepted it all, and that's wonderful. My experience is this is an ongoing evolution of myself, of my soul, of my experience, of my own reality making, of my own acceptance of all that I am and all that I've ever been and all that I will be, kind of converging into now.
Yeah, so anyone that might be leaving critical comments right now saying, they're in the ego of this and that, rubbish actually. You've got to live the life. You try living it and doing it, which you all can. Everyone can channel, right? But this is what you go through as a process to because to channel, really, you have got to be quite egoless, because it's on the fringe of spirituality.
Yeah. That was one of the biggest, I would say, shatterers of my life, was the kind of egoic death that I felt would happen. And I don't say that, I don't believe, because it is not my experience, but so this is just my experience. All I can say is my own experience. Ooh. But I've had egoic deaths that have shattered me to nothing. And then we build back up. We have to egoically cope in the world in many different kinds of ways. So someone who has zero ego, I really have never met a person like that yet. I don't know that I necessarily need to or want to be that personally, because I'm living in a world that is still third dimensional. I'm not living in the fifth or the seventh, and we label that. That's a whole nother conversation about that, especially about the numbers and the labeling and all the. So that's a whole nother conversation. But my ego, that was one of the huge pieces to the process of my spiritual awakening, because I was terrified, literally terrified of scrutiny, of persecution. Yes. And it was also, let's just be really honest, that was a past recollection. It's like all the other timelines that I have been, or past lives as we say, that I have been this or a version of this, or a heretic, or spoke the truth of some version that other people deemed as not in the box. I was killed for it. I was definitely persecuted for it. And you feel that energetic fear for even speaking up. So there was a part of me in that process with the two people who I sat with, but also in the journey of like destruction of myself, of my egoic self. And it was horrible, painful.
Well, if I asked you, where are you now? What would you say?
I'm in another phase, I would say, of that. I feel like I'm in a continuing evolution of this process of this soul, of the remembering. And I know that I know nothing and I know everything. And so it's like this as far as the ego goes, I have certain egoic constructs in place to do the version of this reality that I'm choosing. Well, and I see that.
Okay, and I will say this to add to you as well, is that, and you've said this before, but it's been said before to you, but it's so true. We both channel, and we will in our channeling, at some point it's talked about the massive changes going on in the world, right? Mm-hmm. Our world is changing, and so hence there are many more channelers right now. People are starting to channel more.
Right. Right. There's
even to the point where there's more. There's. I wonder one day, would there be an equal amount of channelers as there are people that call themselves psychic mediums?
So I believe so. And here's why. Many, many years ago, I don't remember if I told this to you or not when we spoke the first time, but Osairah many years ago said that channeling would become channelers. Like I wasn't to be thinking of myself as the exception and something special. And I never did, but I also didn't know how to navigate that idea that I was channeling. And so I really believe that, and people kept asking, can I channel? Can I channel? Can I channel? And so they had this conversation a number of times where they said along the lines of, and I'm just paraphrasing, that one day, channeling would be such a common occurrence that it would be a non-thing. No one would be special for channeling. We would be it would be as simple. It would be like telepathy. It would be like picking up the telephone. That's how channeling would be. As what we feel like picking up the phone is now, is how channeling would be. Which means, they said, there'd be so many people channeling. And what I saw as a vision from that, I will say this, is when they gave that, so a lot of times what happens is they speak and then I get visions of what they're talking about. So I see in what we could say is potentials, or I see visions of the potential realities or something. I saw like if we could imagine the earth, billions of lights all beaming in the same kind of consciousness, and it would look, and we would call that channeling. It's like the channels were open all over the earth, and they were through people, and that was connecting to everyone else. So we had a different energetic system, or a different energetic grid, because of all of the channeling. It was changing, and it is changing, the collective consciousness on this planet.
Yeah, because let's just bring up the basics here. That there is different forms of channeling. I mean, sometimes I think, am I channeling my higher self, or am I a door that's allowed something higher? Well, something that's wanted to work with me, some group that's wanted to work with me. So basically, you could say maybe there's different layers of channeling that are going to come out. Maybe people will channel their higher self. Maybe that's what the car mechanic does when he's trying to fix the car.
Yeah. I feel that, and that's what I teach the workshops that I teach, and that's one of the things I say, because people do want to know how to channel, and the first thing I say is, we are channeling all kinds of genius within us. The basketball player is channeling its genius, but it's also, he's practicing. So there is a convergence that happens with us in being in a body, that we all have many, many abilities. It does matter what we focus on and what we practice. And I did practice. I practiced because I couldn't not. This was pushing into my reality over and over and over again, channeling. So I practiced a lot.
Absolutely, you did. Absolutely. And yeah, so I mean, if there was a difference then, in your opinion, because you say you've got all the C's, what is the difference then between the mediumistic side of your skill and the channeling, just so we've got that clear as well?
Okay, perfect, yeah. So I feel like I definitely am wired as a medium, as a channeler medium, but they blend a little. What happens for me is, it's almost like I pick up, it's like I don't know, it's like turning on the light switch. Okay, now we're going to do channeling. It just like, it's already there. And when the mediumship, I had to learn boundaries with the clairs. I had to learn that, like, I don't want to walk down the street and see funky energies attached to people all the time, or I don't want to see people who've passed all the time. I don't want to see spirits all the time. So I had to set some boundaries, and I had to learn how to do that. And so the difference is that when I sit to do channeling, it's like this: turn on the switch, open the vacuum, and it starts to come in. And the practice is what got me there. And the allowance and the moving out of the places of my own story and my own crap, really. And then the medium or the clairs, I had to work with them. I had to kind of understand that. I had to acknowledge them. And so that feels like an ability. They all feel like abilities. They just feel like, if you want to make a smoothie, you go in and you go towards the blender and you get the stuff out for the smoothie. If you want to make an egg dish, you go to get the eggs out. Yeah. So there's all the different ways that we access.
Yes. Now, I know for some people they're thinking, well, when's he going to get into Osiris and some of the teachings, and when's he going to channel? You know, we're 46 minutes into the interview here, right? I know, right? I wanted this interview to be about yourself, because I think when we meet in person, that's, you know, obviously we get, because, you know, you're going to come onto the documentary I'm working on, and I'm thinking that, you know, we'll do an interview with you and do the a channeling as well, but well, a channeled interview. So that's probably what's going to happen here. But let's just get into Osiris. Well, sorry, your website just right now, as soon as we're 46 minutes in, your website is?
It's gracecavanaugh.com. It's also under Eternal Light Foundation. Originally, it started out as Eternal Light Foundation because Osairah, and it's Osairah, are Osairah, not Osiris.
Oh, sorry.
So there's, that's okay. Osairah basically said to me, I can remember I was sitting at a kitchen table of one of the houses that I lived in, and I said, well, what am I supposed to do with all this? And they basically said, Eternal Light Foundation. And I'm like, what do you mean Eternal Light Foundation? And that was what it was supposed to be. And then they basically said, Eternal Light is because they are eternal light, eternally light. That is the truth of creation. That is what is. And this is the foundation for us to remember. We're here in the third dimension, and we are trying to remember that we are all that, and that there is only source here, and we are co-creating this reality all the time, over and over and over. So much of their teachings was about being and remembering the eternal light and having it in a foundational way that we can continue to access. So important. EternalLightFoundation.com or gracecavanaugh.com.
Okay.
And
no, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, we've been linking that up all throughout this interview as well. It's been in the lower third of the screen. Okay, Osairah. Okay, a collective of 12, light beings, would I class them as, maybe, or?
I refer to them as beings of light, yeah.
Beings of light, yeah. And they come through...
I call them beings of light, but, you know, I think they're really more like consciousness. They're and also I would say they also refer to themselves in some way as a family of light. They are like an agreement, and there's more than just the 12 that come today or tomorrow or the next day. There's, in my guesstimation, there's hundreds or maybe thousands of, not really thousands, but I don't know, of beings who are in this kind of umbrella or house under the umbrella name of Osairah. They said very early on, we know how much you like to have identifiers of names. So this will be the name of this family of light called Osairah. And they are benevolent, vibrational, light consciousness that is here in connection to us from, I would say, the future.
They're from the future. Wow. Okay. So they possibly have already lived lives on this in this reality. Yeah. Okay. Well,
a number of them have. Many of them who come have, and many have not incarnated too. So there's different levels. And so what's fascinating about Osairah and the way that they teach and talk and have connection to people and groups is that they have a really wide offering. And so even though it's coming through, there's 6 and 6. There's 12 of them that always come. And though there's 12 of them that come, they come through as one voice, but they're merging all of the telepathy conversation they're having, that they're trying to weave into the conversation, almost in a very verbally coded way. So it's coded. They said that the way that they have the tone, and how do you call it, cadence. The cadence that they speak is literally vibrating at a certain way so that we take in information exactly as we need it from the code that they're laying in with the sound, even though it sounds like English.
Right. Wow. And you think to yourself, well, why would a group from the future come back to the past? But I guess that by them trying to evolve the past, they're evolving their present moment. As we evolve in the past now, they evolve in the future, don't they, as well? It's all connected, isn't it?
It's always all connected. There's no separation. We think linearly, like timelines. We literally think of, this and this and this, but it's all actually one. It's multidimensionally connected. We are, there's everything all simultaneously happening.
Well,
I've had these most mind-blowing, amazing visions, and it's pretty amazing. We just are very limited.
I absolutely. I mean, I got to ask the collective group a couple of my own questions after, because they came with a message for me. We connected, and then we were going to do an interview, and then you emailed me to say, look, the group's got a message for you, and I knew then to take that message, and it was a message that I was I hoping for on one hand or not? I never went into the reading with the expectation of what they were going to say. I thought it was more about, the documentary or this and that, but it was something totally different. And and then when I got to ask questions afterwards, deep questions as well, they weren't exactly, low level questions. The information that came through was like, wow. That just everything that I was thinking was validated there, and much more as well. So much more. So, oh gosh, and when you're channeling as well, I bet you it feels very. I bet it's adorable. I bet you just love to be in that space when you just sort of take the back seat maybe a little bit and you let them come through. But it's such a grandiose space that as much as you resist doing the channeling, or not as much as you do nowadays, but as we were before, I know that when you go in that space, it's just. Wow, it's just the best space, isn't it?
It is. It can be very wonderful. And I've also had to learn how to take care of myself through that too, because as a person who was feeling very compelled to serve and to give and to offer, and I learned, I had to shift the way I worked a lot in order, they don't deplete me. I deplete myself if I don't do certain ways of caring for this body while allowing that much, I consider it like high voltage energy coming through me. I mean, it's 12 consciousnesses, and I have a very strong and sturdy constitution. I'm constitutionally capable, but I had to get to this point. And, a lot of practice over a lot of years, it does feel good. I also kind of come back with it. For me, I come back and it's like, and I say come back, I'm a ways away. I step aside. But I'm also connected to, and I also recently started to say I'd like to remember more, because I would come back and I wouldn't remember. It would be like this fading dream really fast, and I'd be like, oh, I'd get all this stuff that the person who was sitting before me, I got clear on their stuff and sort of the message and information they got, but I didn't hold that, and I thought there was no reason for me to hold the information. So, I felt like more of a clear channel if I was just letting it move through me, and you got the information or the group got the information, and I was free of interfering in any way. And I still feel that. I feel that I am that, and I enjoyed stepping off, but I also had to recognize how to take care of this body in order to keep the high voltage ability.
Yeah, and what I like about you, you don't judge anybody neither. I almost feel that you wouldn't even judge other channelers, where some other channelers do in some respects. But do you know why that is? It's because we're all having this human experience. We can't forget about that, right? We're not, we're not supposed to be bloody perfect, and we're, I think for as long as we're, not aware of the great. I mean, I think our perception of it all is probably a grain of sand on an infinitive beach of what it really is all about, right?
Right, for sure.
Yeah, we're not supposed to get it. So I like the way you're quite comfortable just in your own journey, just churning it all through. Because I say in your own journey, you've still given readings to a lot of people. You've been doing this for many years now, so you've helped a lot of people with what you do as well. And you don't know what the future of your work is doing in one respect. I mean, it could go all kinds of ways.
Yeah, I really trust the process. I've always trusted it. That was the thing that was inherent in the beginning with me, is I had to trust what was happening. Otherwise, I could feel that that thing that humans do, that I do for sure in my life, to control this and to figure it out and to try to make something happen with it. And at some point, I just had to give that up and kind of surrender to this process. I can maybe I'm going to be a channeler and doing this for the next 40 years. Maybe I'm only going to be doing it for the next 4 months or 4 years. I don't know. I'm allowing the process to develop in me, through me, as me, and this is my life journey, and I try not to judge. One of the key teachings that Osairah talks about is judgment. It's so beautiful the way they transmit the conversation about how judgment is a huge lesson of our growth, of our spiritual development. And so I've learned a lot through that too. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say to you, kind of took the words out of my mouth there. What's one of their main messages? So judgment would be one of them. Yeah,
for sure. One of their main messages is how to kind of be in the identification of how we are constantly in judgment, and how that reflection is if I boil that down, if I take what I've got from what they've said through a billion different speakings of ways that they say what they say, is that you can never, ever, ever know what another person is here for. You can never, ever know. Even the closest person to you, you can never, ever know their soul's journey, or the one across the world that you're judging so harshly and thinking is so bad and so evil and so wrong. You can never, ever actually know ever why that soul is here doing that version of existence because it's actually for them. It's for them and the whole. It's for them and the whole. And we think, how could it be for the whole if it's bad? If you are hurt by someone and you're judging that they hurt you, how do you know that you don't? We get into this idea that it's wrong. Bottom line is I don't think that it's a tough one, because some people do not like to talk about this. People don't like the idea that they have to look at the idea that I'm getting a little off, but
no, I understand.
Yeah, they just don't like to think about the idea that, wait a minute, someone who seems to me totally bad and wrong, I can't judge them. That's not wrong. People have an idea that that's then spiritual bypassing, or saying that the victim is responsible for something, right? That I'm then saying the perpetrator of that bad thing has no personal responsibility. No, I never said that. And nor does Osairah. They say you can never know what that's for in the bigger, wider, broader picture of everything. You just don't know what that's there for. So it's easier if you learn to step away from that. Doesn't mean you abdicate it. Doesn't mean you say, oh yeah, go for it. If you feel to be involved with that, then that's your calling. But judgment itself is a different thing.
It's so beautiful, just how different channelers have different messages. Their overall theme of their work, one's maybe more law of attraction, one's maybe for the nature, or connecting with nature. One's for your work, and it's all just so. We live in such a huge world. We don't think we do sometimes, but with so many people, in the sense that all different souls are on a different journey, and they're going to resonate with different channelers.
Yeah, it's exactly right. Like, I know the people, I know what this has served. I do. I'm gratefully, completely honored and humbled by how this has served. And I know my work or my offerings may not be for everybody, but I also know that it touches so many. And that's just one piece, the judgment conversation that Osairah brings. I mean, they are multidimensional, wide open love connection of creation. They will spill the beans. They tell you they do. They spill the beans.
They do, especially when I was speaking to them about the nature of reality and how everything's happening at once. And they talked about Groundhog Day lives to me. Yeah, that the repeating of the same life, and how a lot of us are on this karmic wheel, and that we're here to help awaken people, but not but what they said was so interesting, that they said that, and I'm paraphrasing here, that when we look at all the masses that are asleep, and that they're playing out some beautiful things because they're playing out the karmic contracts. That doesn't mean, though, that they have to keep playing out the same karmic contracts, and that if there is a window of awakening, that's what we're here to do, just shine ourselves, not being addicted to being caretakers, or some sort of messiah complex. Yet it's just to shine that light, to say, hey, have you thought about this version of it? There's another way. And sometimes
yes.
I'm paraphrasing their words there.
Right, but the infinite potentialities, and they really like to highlight how we are constantly choosers. We're choosing, we're co-creating. And that is a difficult one when certain people are locked into constructs of belief about, well, wait a minute, my mother was victimized by this and that and this, and so that can't be that we are co-creating our reality. I mean, there's so much that's packed into this. Then we are literally unpacking how so many deep constructs of belief which limit and co-create more realities like that. So they have such an excellent way of sharing. And actually, something that I find is fascinating about Osairah is, like I said to you before, about the way that the cadences that they speak, and sort of we call it an accent, but the way that they speak, it's actually frequency. So it actually is penetrating more than just the mind, the brain, the interpreter that you're having a conversation with. Your brain is working overtime to think about what they're saying, but actually, meanwhile, all of this wonderful energy is downloading into the presence of you and wakes you up at a different level. So it's not just the language that's dropping in.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. Well, look, I think you've answered this question. Well, you have. You really. I was going to say there, what's the most important message? But I think you've kind of said that, haven't you?
I think there's so many important messages. I mean, one thing that I will say that I feel like is a constant work that I'm still always into, what they're trying to teach, is that love is really the answer. Love is the answer. Love is what is. Love is the creation. They often say something along the lines of, you are the breath of life, literally of creation, and that is love and light. And so, it sounds corny because we get trapped by these ideas about, cliches, but if we break that down, really, every single person here only wants to feel love. We only want love. We only want to remember love. And light and love is literally the stuff of life. So light and love is literally the creation of all that there is. And that, I would say, is their greatest message.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Grace, I just want to thank you so much for joining us today. And, I wish we had more time to do another hour, in one sense, to do the challenge. But I know that I'm going to see you in LA, and I'm going to do it. We're going to get the interview and for the documentary when I come to see you as well. So I just want to thank you so much for, stepping into your power and helping people to reawaken to their greatest version of themselves. So just thank you so much for what you're doing.
Thank you. It's my pleasure, and I really appreciate you, Kevin, for the work you're doing, and for the push through the hard stuff. Because it's not lost on me that it's not easy to do it. When we're in this journey and when we're in this work, I have felt like I'm alone in my bubble over here, just doing the work, showing I'm being here for the ones who come and who get attracted to me, to come to see me in person, who either see me on Skype or do a workshop with me. I'm writing a book, and it's not easy. So these things that we do, no matter what they look like, to bring the level of consciousness up for others, we can feel so alone and freaking crazy And we can want to bow out all the time. I know I have wanted to bow out a lot. And so I want to really honor you and your soul's decision to do this work step by step, day by day, hard spot by hard spot. It's not an easy walk, but I really, 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 along with probably millions and millions of other people, want to thank you for being brave enough to keep doing it.
Oh, there's been many days when I'm like, what the hell am I doing? But it's all kind of, yeah, I know, right? I think that was a message for both of us and many other people out there, actually, you know. But I know you're honoring me there, but I mean, I think it also resonates with a lot of other people.
Well,
you know.
And it is, you're right. It's honoring me too, because like I have to keep myself psyched up just to show up sometimes, right? Like,
well, you're doing bloody good, you know, a pat on the back to you, but from yourself as well. I mean, you make it look easy, and I know you're not going to like me saying that, but you know, and I think that's called time served. But yeah, that's beautiful. Well, look, you know, by sharing ourselves and being honest about ourselves, which is what you've done in this interview, it will only help others. So I appreciate you, stripping your soul bare in that respect. So just thank you very, very much.
Thank you too, my friend. Thank you so much. I look forward to more.
Well, we've come to an end on tonight's show. Don't forget that you can listen and watch all our past interviews on the More Show's official YouTube channel. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new daily shows. You may also find out more on all past and upcoming guests by going to themoreshow.com, and do like us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates. So until next time, be safe.